When you're an obsessive perfectionist, you don't really have to deal with aftermath. I never had a detention, it's true, never had a detention in school, never got a speeding ticket, never got fired from a job. So in 2008, when I was pregnant, I decided that I was going to be a perfect mother and not have to deal with any of that aftermath either. And it was good because in Brooklyn, New York, where I lived, being a perfect mother was kind of a sport. You know, and it had these rules, so I knew exactly what to do. You had to start by having a natural labor. You had to breastfeed immediately and keep all the bottles and pacifiers away. You had to take at least a year off your job, even if you loved your job, to be a stay-at-home mom. You had to cloth diaper, make your own baby food, and craft. Apparently crafting was very important to good motherhood, but anyway. So I was well on my way, but I had a few glitches. The pediatrician described my daughter, Stella, as the top 1% of restless sleepers. So she woke up about every 45 minutes, screaming her head off, didn't nap, and this lasted about 16 months. Yeah. She only wanted the breast all the time because we waited so long to try to introduce a bottle or pacifier, so it was me, 24 hours a day. And while she loved nursing, she hated to cuddle. So she would suck vehemently on my breast, but push me away the entire time. And I got to the point where I wanted to stick her in a bed in her own room and just rip them off and like give them to her. Plus we had just moved into this new apartment and we had this upstairs neighbor who did freelance mechanical work, meaning he would drag a carburetor up to his apartment and dump it on the floor above us, making all this noise. And he was an insomniac freelance mechanic, so he did this at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And his workshop was located directly above my daughter's bedroom. So sleep was just not a thing. And so suddenly, the girl who never got a detention in school grew up to become the woman who was snapping because she wasn't getting any sleep, and her daughter didn't seem to really like her, and her upstairs neighbor was a crazy lunatic. And so I screamed at the store clerk who let somebody cut in front of me, and I screamed at the mom in the mom's group who asked me if I was okay, and I screamed every single day at my husband because he got to ride the fucking subway to work reading a book while I was washing shit off of cloth diapers and breastfeeding all day long. Whew. They talk about postpartum depression, but I had postpartum rage. And I had all this time to try to think about where it came from. You know, I would be breastfeeding all the time, listening to that mechanic upstairs, and I started to put the pieces together. And it became clear that I had lived my whole life surrounding myself by all these little perfect moments and control. And I started to think about why? What was I protecting myself from? What was I so angry about? And suddenly it dawned on me, there was this thing that happened when I was little, this thing that my dad did to me when I was 4, that was so unspeakable. But I figured that if I just surrounded myself with all this great stuff, nobody would ever look at me and think that, and then I wouldn't have to think about it either. And it worked for 32 years. And then all the sleeplessness and the stress and anxiety just ripped all of those beautiful, perfect moments away and left me with this one thing that was all I could think about. And that's how the woman who never got a speeding ticket ended up in the ER at the local mental hospital under suicide watch. And that was a moment where I was soaking in some aftermath. It was wretched. My husband had my daughter in the waiting room, and she was screaming, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." They didn't have a room, so I was on a gurney behind a woman who kept shitting her pants, and in front of a man who was screaming how he was going to kill everybody. And they wouldn't even let me read a magazine, because apparently you can kill yourself with a Marie Claire. Didn't know that. But as horrible as this moment was, I'm so grateful for it. Because screwing up that badly gave me permission to never be a perfectionist again. And it gave me the freedom to start looking at those dark, scary moments in my past, really examine them and sit with them, and then let them go. And it was the gateway to my present, a time when I have a 4-year-old daughter who sleeps through the night and loves to cuddle, and a peaceful, respectful marriage, and a beautiful home with no upstairs neighbor at all. And now I can surround myself with all of these wonderful, imperfect moments. Thank you.